Have your period pains been so bad that you ever think, how is this possibly normal? Or will I have to suffer like this until I reach menopause? Or maybe when or if I get pregnant, that's the only time I'll catch a break. Most women are given band-aid answers for their period pain. Take this painkiller, take the birth control pill, just tough it out. But none of these solutions explain why period pain is happening in the first place. I'm Dr. Steffe, a naturopathic doctor, and I help women heal their hormones and cycles in a natural, holistic way. In this video, I'm going to talk about whether period pain is actually normal or not, going to talk about the root causes as to why it happens, and offer some really practical tools that you could take away and start using today. So let's bust this myth right now. Period pain is not normal, and nor will it ever be. Pain is a signal. And our bodies don't create pain for no reason. So we can't just take that concept of just because we get periods, some women can get pain and this is considered normal. Once we get to the roots of why the pain is happening, that's when we can start to heal and heal so that the pain doesn't come back. I see women week in, week out that come in looking for support with their period pain because they're getting dismissed and they're super frustrated because deep down they know this isn't normal and they're not getting the answers they want and they know that they need. And research also backs that up to 20% of women who have really bad period pain, it significantly affects the quality of their life. It's not just a nuisance or something that's uncomfortable. This is a serious health issue for so many women. And I know this firsthand because I used to have really, really bad cramps for over 14 years. So from when I first got my period as a early teen all the way to my late 20s, I used to have to take ibuprofen, Tylenol, Advil, any of those combinations around the clock every 4 to 6 hours. If I didn't, I used to throw up from the pain. It was so bad. I'd be curled over. Sometimes I would miss class, call in sick. It was horrible. And like many of you, I was dismissed. My doctor told me, like, oh, just take this medication. I'll give you an even stronger painkiller. And this type of painkiller could cause stomach issues. So I'm going to prescribe another medication that could combat the stomach issues you're getting. Never once did they tell me why it was happening and how I could get rid of this altogether instead of relying on monthly medication that honestly I didn't want to take, but I had to because I wasn't functional. But I eventually learned what the roots of that was, and that's what led me to where I am today. This is why I do what I do. I was able to heal my period pain naturally, and I haven't had cramps for a really long time, and I don't need to take any painkillers. So let's get to the root cause of what is actually happening in the body and why are we getting period pain. So let's start breaking this down. What is actually happening in our bodies when we have our period and when we're getting cramps? The first thing is understanding that our uterus is a muscle. And in order for our period to actually come, this muscle needs to contract so that the lining on the inside of our uterus can shed and come off, which becomes our flow. So when we get our period, our uterus is contracting. And just like any muscle, with that contraction, we can feel a mild ache, downward pressure. But there's a rule of thumb that I tell my patients. We don't want any type of this period ache, cramping to be more than a 3 out of 10. 10 being the highest pain that we ever think is possible. So if we're starting to get cramps that are beyond this 3 out of 10, it is too high. Outside of this 3 out of 10 scale that I just mentioned, there are some other things I also want you to start paying attention to that's connected to period pain and it not being normal. One of them is sometimes there are some women that don't get pain when their flow starts, but they're starting to get pain before. And that pain could be lower back pain, it could be in your lower abdomen. This is not a good sign and this is not normal. The other thing is if you were like me where I had to have painkillers around the clock, also not a good sign, not normal if we're having to use painkillers every couple of hours to reduce pain. And the thing is, sometimes it doesn't even take the edge off. The other one is if it's significantly affecting your life where you have to call in sick, you have to cancel plans, maybe you're just bed rotting all day on that day of your period from pain. not a good thing, not normal. So now that you've learned that all of this stuff isn't normal, let's get to one of the major questions. Why is this happening? What is the root cause? And the major root cause for really bad period pain is having high inflammation. When inflammation is high, it will create pain. So let's take a step back to even talk about what is inflammation. You could often hear this word. Most people can relate to inflammation when, let's say, you roll an ankle and it swells and you could see that it's inflamed. Yes, that's what it is, but I want you to learn a little more of the concept of inflammation and how it relates back to your cycles and your periods. So, inflammation is created by our body's immune system. And our immune system is kind of like our body's security guard and security system. It will only trigger the signal of inflammation when your body feels the need to protect itself. So, if the body has to be in any type of protection mode, whether it's from an injury or from a virus or from food, from stress, from not getting sleep, our body perceives all of these things as threats. And so it goes into this protection mode. When it goes into protection mode, that's when inflammation gets turned on. But here's the thing, there are like two different types of inflammation. There's the small kind and the big kind. Small types of inflammation are things that we actually want. So, this is, yes, when we do roll our ankle or when we do get sick with a cold or flu, we want our body to create this response to protect us. I always say it's kind of like that's a small little fire. If it's a little campfire, a campfire is often warm and cozy and it's small. It's not something that's big. Big inflammation is when the small inflammation doesn't go away and it just gets bigger and bigger, and different things are signaling, like pouring of gasoline onto that fire for it to get big. That's when it becomes like a forest fire. It's not a small little bonfire where you're around it and you're having s'mores and maybe like keeping warm. These big fires are like forest fires, causing a lot of havoc, a lot of disruption. That is what's happening when we have period pain. High amounts of inflammation are going on that's creating big contractions of the uterus. And that's why we're feeling that intense pain. So, what might this gasoline be that we're pouring on to this inflammation fire, making it super, super big and making our pain stronger? It's actually coming from your day to day lifestyle habits. So things like what you're eating, if you're having a lot of processed food, refined sugars, drinking of alcohol, the different things that we put on our bodies. So different lotions, shampoos, makeups. There are some ingredients in those things that our body creates protective mechanisms against. It doesn't like it and can create inflammation. It could also be happening if we are stressed. This is a huge one that gets vastly overlooked because sometimes you can be eating a little better. Maybe you're moving your body. But if you have high amounts of stress, it's going to create inflammation, same way that inflammation is going to get created from poor sleep. Another really overlooked one is in your gut. If you're not going to the bathroom every day, this can also create a lot of inflammation and make your period pain worse. Let's talk solutions. And what can we do to help calm down this inflammation fire that's giving us these period cramps? I'm going to make it simple and break it down into 4 simple steps. The first one is we have to master our nutrition by having more calming foods. So, a lot of fruits and vegetables, high quality proteins like salmon that have really good anti inflammatories in them. And we have to start reducing our processed food intake. The second is we have to support our muscle. Remember, the uterus is a muscle. And think of the times where you get that muscle cramp in your calf or your leg or you're a Charlie horse. It's often because we're dehydrated. So we have to make sure we're drinking enough water and that we're getting movement so that there's circulation of blood flow. When we don't stretch and when we don't move our muscles, things seize up and there's pain. Same thing with our uterus. The third is heal your gut. If we don't have daily poops, we are going to be backed up, That backed up is going to create inflammation, and it's also going to make our period pain worse. So we have to make sure we're supporting things so that we're going to the bathroom every day, fully coming out, easy to pass, and easy going. The last step is to get a handle on your stress. This is probably one that I find most people miss, but it could be one of the biggest contributors because many people say, but I'm not stressed. This is where we really have to reflect back on how busy is our day, how are we feeling emotionally, how are our boundaries, and start thinking of things like breath work, yoga, moving our bodies, connecting with people that we really love and feel safe with. These are all things that we have to intentionally put in place to help us manage our stress better. The bottom line are that your cramps aren't random signals and they aren't normal. It is a sign that your body is very inflamed, and there's a lot that we can do to help calm that inflammation from the inside out so that we can get that long-term pain-free cycles. If you're wondering whether your hormones might also be a part of this and maybe they too are adding a fuel to this inflammation fire, I've also created a free hormone quiz for you. It only take a couple minutes to complete, but it can let you know what hormone patterns might be happening that could be contributing to your pain. I'll link it below in the description and I'll also pin it to the comments. And if this video helped you, hit subscribe so you don't miss next week's video.